So, hello, Kav. It's really nice to see you again. I don't know if you remember. I think maybe one of the first Blitz Vega interviews you ever did was when I had a radio show on Sirius XM, and I guess that was 2019, I guess it was already.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, with me and Andy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very happy to see you again, but it's bittersweet circumstances because at that time you had just released like Hey Christo, the debut single, and now the album, the Blitz Vega album is coming out, but Andy's not with us to join us in this interview. So I'm sure you've been asked this in every interview you've done for this project, but like obviously it's a bittersweet occasion. How does it feel to have this record finally coming out under these circumstances?
I mean, it feels good to get it out because it's been an 8-year journey, and
Yeah.
it's kind of strange, really, because you can't. It's just it's weird to put it into perspective to kind of like sort of think, well, the album's out finally. It's taken so long to get it together, but it's kind of I don't know. I don't know what to think. My honest answer is I'm not really thinking about it too much. I'm just sort of just doing it. Andy made it really easy for me to kind of get on with the project because he made me promise him that I would release the record and take it on the road. So
Mm.
that's kind of that's what I'm doing, and trying to answer that is just difficult because I don't know what I think really. I'm just happy it's coming out.
As am I, and that's a fair answer. You said 8-year journey. I don't think I realized it had been that long. So when did this project start exactly, and under what circumstances?
Well, we started recording in December 2016 in a studio in Silver Lake, and Andy was over in LA from New York, and he just came down to the studio and recorded on a track, and he just said to me, let's start a band, and that was it. So we started a band, but we didn't announce it. We just focused on recording for a while, and then launched it in 2019 around a similar time to when we saw you.
So obviously you were Manchester royalty, the two of you, So I probably asked you this in 2019, but refresh my memory how you two even met in the first place and became friends and then eventually bandmates.
Well, I was in a band from my hometown in Leicester, which is in the middle of England, and we were up in Manchester and we were doing a show. And Andy was there. Manny from the Stone Roses brought him over to the show. He was already aware of us as a band, and
What
we were
what
kids.
band
We were
was
like,
it? I'm sorry to
it
interrupt
was,
you.
yeah, it was a band called AKA
Okay.
Weave. There's a long story behind it, but
Okay.
it never really sort of launched in the end. But yeah, so Andy came to the show, and there was a couple of guys from New Order and like Oasis, and just bands that we really looked up to. So and Andy kind of came backstage afterwards, and he encouraged us, and he was just humble and just really nice. And so we stayed in touch over the years, and then I was playing Coachella with Happy Mondays in 2007,
I was
and
there.
Andy was
I was
DJ.
there.
Yeah, yeah, right.
My friend Daniel Martin from NME, who sadly
That's
is
it. Yeah, I
actually
thought so.
yeah, and he sadly sent shout out to Daniel Martin, but he sadly passed away. That was the weekend I met Daniel, and he was Bez on stage with you guys. So
No
that's
way.
really funny. Yeah, I was
Wow.
there in the audience that day. So yeah, so you were playing Coachella.
Yeah, so playing Coachella, and Andy and I hung out afterwards, and he was like, if you ever fancy starting a band, then I'd love to work with you. So as both of us were well, I kind of it's hard to say because he's not here, but I suppose both of us sort of take our time with things a little bit. So it was suggested in 2007 that
Oh
we
wow.
would, work together, and then forward a few years to December 2016 when it finally happened. And then once we were in the studio, it was just the most enjoyable recording experience, creative experience that I'd ever been involved with, and just to be in the studio with him was he was incredible. He was genuinely the greatest musician and man I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And just, working with.
So yeah, so Northern Gentleman is finally out. I hope I don't, if I'm asking questions, like if they're bothering you, if they're,
No, no, no,
if they're
no.
touching
Sorry,
you.
no,
No, if
no,
they
no.
are though, you like tell me though, like let me know. But I don't, I was aware, I wasn't like super public knowledge, but it was known that, Andy had cancer and had been battling it intermittently over the years. So when you finally got around to making this album, Northern Gentleman, I like, was he, I'm trying to rephrase this still, was he sick? Was he aware he kind of like was like working on like a battle against time or on borrowed time, or like what were his spirits? What was his health like? What were you guys dealing with? What were you up against while you were making
Uh,
this record?
well, we always knew it was there, and I mean, the band was, like I said, a 7-year project, but it's been 8 years for me. For 5 of those years, Andy was battling pancreatic cancer, so we were always aware that it was there. It was like this weird thing that was kind of like a, you know, bit of a shadow hanging over him, but he never let us sort of think about it, or apart from personal phone calls between us, we never really spoke about it. He was just really, really positive. He loved working on the Blitz Vega stuff so much. It gave him so much joy. And he would be, he was having treatment in New York, say at Sloan Kettering, and then the next day he would be on a flight to LA to get to the studio because he was so excited about working on this record. And as soon as he was in the studio, and we worked at so many different studios in LA, but once we got to Will Kennedy studio in the Sound City lot, it was great because we could close the door, and we were just in our own bubble. And he never really let you think about he was unwell or he was on borrowed time. And to be totally honest, you just wouldn't know because he looked great. He was, his spirits were high all the time. And it was only really in 2023 when it started really impacting him physically that we really sort of, realized, okay, well, there is a chance that he, might not be around for too long. But again, even in March 2023, he was talking about getting back on tour, and that was something he was aiming for. And it was difficult for him, but when he was making the music, when he was talking about the music, he was really happy. And it wasn't until sort of April 2023 I sort of really, I suppose I'm I'm just an optimist in the way I think generally, and I just didn't feel that there was any need to even think about the fact that he may not be here. So he had to really sit me down and get my attention. He was very calm, and I can sometimes get quite excited. And he really had to sort of drill it into me. He was like, Kav, you need to listen to me. That I don't think I'm going to make it, and I think I just want you to promise me that the album will be released and you take it on the road. And that's the only thing I want you to promise me that you'll do. And so so we kind of shook hands, hugged, and that was 3 weeks before he passed away. So.
Oh, oh, wow.
But yeah. So that was always, just yeah. It was very difficult. But
Yeah.
again, he took all the decisions out of away from me really. So after he passed, I knew what I had to do. I didn't have to, sit around and think, should I do this or should I not do this? It was like, no, I promised Andy. So it doesn't matter about what I feel about it at the moment. I've got to honor the promise and just get on with that. And then if I do that, then I've I've delivered on what I said I would do.
Was the album Northern Gentleman completed, or were you tasked with having to finish like some loose ends after Andy passed, or was it already completely done and he approved it and everything?
He'd approved it. He'd chosen the track order, so we had like 17 songs that we put forward for the record. Andy wanted a 10-song record, so we got it down to 10, and then everything was mixed and ready. He had a few notes the last time I saw him, so after he passed, then I just got into the studio with Will Kennedy, and we just sat in sat in the studio and worked on Andy's notes, and it took us a bit of time till the middle of July in 2023, and then we were just kind of right. I think we've done everything that he wanted us to do for the album, and then just that was it. It was just a few minor little things.
So there's 7 other songs then that might they see
Uh,
the light of day at some point?
Well, we've got 7 songs that are completed, and then there's lots of songs because we were recording for 7 years. So there's a lot of songs that he recorded bass on and stuff that we never really finished that are just sitting there that I haven't even listened to yet. So who knows? But we've got the documentary that we were making for 7 years. So with all the behind the scenes stuff and everything we were doing in the studio. And that was due to come out actually while Andy was here. So we sort of, put that on the back burner after he passed. And it's something we're sort of picking up again now. So we were sort of just in talks with various streaming networks about that. And we'll see. I mean, there's a possibility it may be released at the end of 2025, but it's kind of like both of our journeys and the band's journey to making this record and everything that happened in between and everything that was going on, and between LA, New York, and London. So
Oh wow, I can't wait to see that. I hope that does come out sooner than later. That's really cool. Strange question, but given everything you just told me about Andy's illness and his awareness of it and all the conversations that you had at the end towards the end, do you think this project maybe extended his life? Like I've heard other examples of like when people are sick with whatever they're sick with, but they're excited about something and they have something to focus on. It kind of like, yeah, it kind of keeps them going, gives them something to like live for and be excited about and get out of bed every day. And do you think like yeah, it actually might have extended his life or improved his health that he had
I
this
mean, it
thing he
had
was.
sorry. I mean, it had a huge positive impact on him. He was so engaged. It's all he spoke about. We were on the phone, every few days, wherever we were. If we weren't together, we were talking about it. We spent hours just kind of hanging out, talking about it when we were together, and then all the sessions in the studio as well. He really felt that it was his project, and that's something that really came across to me, and I was just happy to be part of it with him. And I learned so much. He gave me so much confidence as well, and to really sort of dig deep in myself for my lyrics and stuff, with whereas before maybe I thought a little too much about what people thought, or just other things would determine how I recorded music, whereas Andy had this amazing ability to give you confidence and make you feel relaxed and just kind of express yourself in the truest and most honest way.
Had
So
you
that was sorry.
no, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, obviously, Andy Rourke's a legend. Had you grown up being a big Smiths fan? I know you're younger than Andy. So had you when you first got with him, were you like, oh my God, I can't even believe this guy wants to like start a band with me, kind of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd known him for years, so we were sort of friends. But yeah, I remember the first day he came to the studio. Me and Asa, the keyboard player, we just recorded our parts, and Andy picked up the bass and he played the bass line, and we kind of just looked over at each other, and it was a song called LA Vampire, and it's got a very Smiths-esque kind of Andy Rourke bass line to it. And we both kind of looked at each other and kind of smiled and thought, wow, Andy Rourke's played bass on, you know, our songs. So yeah, that was a moment where you just heard this style of bass and feel that only he had, and you'd heard on so many records, and there was such a huge part of your youth, and every indie alternative, you know, club night we went to when we were kids, and just yeah, I mean, he was always one of my all-time favorite bass players. So
Yeah.
to work with him was an absolute, yeah, it was quite mind-blowing at times, but you know, he was just because he was so humble, you know, and he didn't he knew how good he was, but he was always surprised when somebody recognized him, or you know, kind of you know, just came up to him and said, "Hey, you Andy from the Smiths?" You know, he would be as shocked as he was the first time somebody said that to him or whatever. So he was quite a funny character like that. I remember once we were in a restaurant in Los Feliz, and Tom York was in there, and Andy was you know, Andy was there, and you know, but Tom York was just seemed to be looking, oh, that's Andy Rourke, kind of, you know, it was, whereas Andy was like, oh, that's, you know, but
That's Tom York.
yeah, but couldn't understand that Tom York was like, wow, that's Andy Rourke, you know, who obviously the Smiths are one of his favorite bands. So yeah, he was very laid back about it all. So yeah, as soon as he plugged the bass in, you just knew that was it. And that's what he said. He said, I just want to play bass. That's it.
Wow. Yeah, that's so cool. Obviously this brings me to asking about a track that came out, I think, well over a year ago, but it's on the album Strong Forever, which
Yeah.
was obviously Johnny Marr from the Smiths on it. Like, tell me about the experience of recording that. I'm, you know, unlike some other members of the Smiths that are often in the news having seeming wars of words through publicists and managers, it seems like Andy and Johnny were always very simpatico and had remained friendly over the years.
Yeah, I think Andy was cool with pretty much everyone. But yeah, I mean that was a bit of a moment. It just came out of the blue. We were recording in March 2023, no 2020, sorry, just before COVID really sort of hit, and we were in a studio in LA, and you know, Andy had turned up with a mask, and that was the first time I'd really seen anyone wear a mask, and and then when LA started shutting down, we left the studio and we'd recorded half of Strong Forever together. So then basically Andy calls me a week later after I've gone back to England, and he was like, "Oh, Johnny said he'll play on Strong Forever," and you know, I was like, "Oh, cool," and it was so blasé the way he said it, you know. Within a few days later, you know, Johnny Marr had basically recorded his guitar parts at home in his studio and sent them over. And I remember sitting in my studio in England, and I just muted all the other music and just listened to Andy Rourke and Johnny Marr play together. And yeah, it was a moment.
I get chills you just telling me that.
It was beautiful. It was actually, that's the only thing I can say. If somebody asked me, how would you describe it? So it was, the only thing I can say is it just sounded beautiful. You know, that's what it was. You know, it was just so you could feel the magic of those two musicians and why they meant so much to so many people, and obviously they still do. And obviously Johnny Marr is here, but you know, yeah, it was very special to be on that track and be a part of that track.
Was there any significance given everything we've been talking about the fact that Andy was battling cancer throughout this whole journey, to the title Strong Forever? Was it I assume you wrote but like, was it an anthem for him or anything like that?
It was I guess not it wasn't like the main influence towards it. It was generally leading up to just everything that was happening to people in the world, people just generally trying to, you know, challenge going through different challenges, finding a time where things are a little bit difficult, always being probably the odd one out at school. Maybe I used influences from, my time growing up as a musician, where I grew up. The idea was the song was written for a campaign to bring people together, and so it was like a campaign for the Premier League in
Oh,
football. So that's what inspired the track, but we didn't use it for that in the end, because originally Tom Meehan from the band Kasabian was singing the lead vocals on it, and I'd wrote the words. So he'd gone through certain troubles, and Andy was like, you have to sing it. And through that, when we decided to do that, it kind of delayed the process of releasing it. So we took it away from the campaign and just kind of kept it as a straight up Blitz Vega song, and and then released it ourselves. So yeah, and yeah, so it's a special song just to have those two guys on it together, and it meant the world to Andy because his best mate from school was playing guitar on it, and and he was really happy about that.
I mean, lots of fans, Smiths fans in general, were excited to have those two on a record. And as I mentioned, you know, Mar and Morrissey are, yeah, we're not going to hear them on a record like ever. Or I mean, it's interesting timing, just as I'm doing this interview with you, that like there's been another wave of news. I'm sure you're aware of it, about like,
Yeah,
supposedly, whatever, who has claim to the name or whatever. Supposedly they were offered us money, whatever. We all know that reunion isn't going to happen. And now it's really not going to happen because sadly it's not a Smiths reunion if it's not all four, if Andy is not part of it. So like, that it would never happen anyway. But I guess what I'm setting up is, do you have any insight into, like, you talk about how Andy was so humble and still seems kind of surprised when people would recognize him or revere him. Was that something he had ever one time hoped for? Like, to have a Smiths reunion, even if it was just a one-off, was that something that was ever in his dreams, or was he not bothered about stuff like that?
he didn't really talk about it that much, but I mean, I think he, he would have done it if Johnny Marr had suggested it. I think that was it. I think he would have gone with whatever Johnny would have suggested, really, and he would have been up for it if the rest of the band were up for it. So I think if Morrissey and Johnny Marr worked it out and they were doing it, then Andy would have definitely done it. He loved the stuff he did with the Smiths. So I've definitely surprised a few people at parties in LA when Andy would show up and a Smith tunes playing, and then he would talk to people about it and get really excited about it, and if there was a bass there he'd pull it out and play, and so, or a guitar or whatever, he'd play along to it. So yeah, he I think he would have definitely enjoyed that.
Yeah, I would have as well. You talk about people like Tom York or whatever, coming up to him in restaurants and being like, "Oh my God, you're Andy York." But do you feel in general he is known for being as great a bass player as he is? When I see roundups of like, greatest bass players of all time, what listicles, whatever, I don't know if I always see him there. And of course, the focus for like the lay person, the non-super fan, the non-music geek, the non-musician, it's, all about Morrissey and Marr. But you don't really, do you feel like Andy has gotten his due for his influence as a bassist?
Um, I don't really know. I suppose musicians really respect him. Bass players respect him. But I think he should be regarded as one of the greatest bass players because he was so unusual and so unique. And how melodical he was with the bass is absolutely exceptional. I mean, obviously the stuff he did with the Smiths, the bass drives a lot of the music, and the guitar weaves in and out on top, and it's and they work so well together. And the space between those three musicians is exceptional as well. And the bass just, I mean, he was so talented at such a young age. I think he grew, and obviously even the stuff he did with Sinead O'Connor and the
Mm.
Pretenders and people like that, you can really sort of hear Andy Rourke, the stuff he did with Blitz Vega as well. I mean, when you saw him in the studio and you saw him play and create, it was effortless. It was just there. It was just a part of him. And yeah, I'd like to see him respected, I suppose, more of in a wider way, maybe. But I suppose really any musician, whether they're a fan of the Smiths or not, they can listen to him and go, wow, what a exceptional musician. How did he do that? So yeah. Hopefully he does.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, I think the Northern Gentleman record and this project will, create, shine more light on that as well. I have some notes here. If you wonder why I keep looking at the side, sometimes when people see my videos, they're like, why should you look at the side? It's because I have so many notes. I over prepare for all my interviews and I got a whole other monitor here. So I'm looking at notes. So
Oh, sorry, I'm looking everywhere because I'm
no,
suddenly
no,
in a
no.
dark.
I just, no, not
I'm
you.
back in England, so I'm in a dark cave at the moment, and anyway.
I just
Yeah,
put it
so
as
I'm
a
a little
caveat
bit.
because
Yeah,
sometimes on my YouTube videos, sometimes people will actually be like, why does she keep looking at the side? It's because I got up pages of notes here, people. So I was writing down the fact that Andy was actually, he'd been in, I consider Blitz Vega a supergroup. And, but this wasn't the first supergroup he'd been in. I'm looking here. He was in Freebase with Manny
yeah,
from the Stone Roses and Peter Hook, who I actually just saw
yeah.
last week. He was in DARK or Dark with Dolores from the Cranberries, who sadly is also no longer with us. And then he was in Blitz Vega with you and your pedigree. So was there something he got out of it, like kind of joining forces with, doing these kind of like, super groups, joining forces with other luminaries of the music world?
I think people just wanted him in their bands. I think if Andy Rourke joins your band, you don't need to worry about the bass. But I think with Blitz Vega, he was so involved with the songwriting as well. To the point where for the creation of the songs, I'm not sure how involved he was in all of his projects. I think he was quite involved with the DARK stuff as well, and the stuff with Hooky and Manny. But with Blitz Vega, he was creating. It was coming from him. A lot of the songs, so the ideas and stuff. So yeah, I think he just loved being in bands. Like he said, he just wanted to play bass. So if somebody said, fancy joining a band, mate, he was over. He was there. He was ready to go.
So tell me about the kind of the sound, because you mentioned Kasabian, which is interesting because I hear elements of that. I hear elements of like Primal Scream, Black Rover Motorcycle Club a bit. I mean, there are elements that sound Smithsy, I guess, for lack of a better word, because it's Andy's bass. So of course it's going to have that. But the sound's very interesting. It draws from a lot of elements and kind of like maybe what I would consider like a halcyon time of the aughts, when there were like when I feel like England was on fire and there were like a lot of really cool indie bands happening. Like what, tell me about the process of you guys forming the sound of Blitz Vega together.
The thing was, we went into it just to record and enjoy recording and just being creative without any chains. And Andy said to me early on, he said, let's just create music that we would like to listen to. So that was it, really. We had such a wide range of genres that we were into, if you could call them genres. I'm not really a fan of genres. I just like music. So we all of those influences just, they just kind of followed us around and ended up in our music. We could have been listening to, an album on the way to the studio, as we did a lot. And I would pick him up and we'd sit in the car in traffic, obviously in LA, and just be listening to tunes, and then going into the studio, and subconsciously that would, influence us in some way. But generally, the running joke would always be, oh, that sounds a bit Stonesy, because we were both huge Rolling Stones fans, and that would be something that we would connect on a lot. Bowie, Neil Young, and all those influences may not shine through as obviously as others, but there was no like kind of plan to make it sound anyway. It was just whatever happens, and let's not overthink it. So yeah, we just made an album that we enjoyed listening to.
Was the intention ever for this to be an album or a full-fledged band, or did it start with just as a lark, like let's hang out in the studio and see what happens. Did you expect it would go this far?
So we started recording after the first day, first session. Andy was so excited about it that we decided to start the band, and then we thought we'd just focus on the studio. And then we started getting offered tours. So then we had tours booked. I mean, we cancelled 3 US tours, 40 dates. We cancelled cancelled South American dates. We cancelled so many shows, and we
Was
were
that
only able
be,
to actually.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but was that because of the
Yeah.
pandemic or because Andy was ill? It was because of the
No,
pandemic.
because Andy was ill, and then the
Oh,
pandemic was the last tour. So two
yeah.
of the tours were cancelled because of Andy's illness,
Mm,
and then the last one because of the pandemic.
it's a shame.
And so, yeah, I mean, the whole idea was, once we'd been in the studio for a few months, the whole idea was to just tour and play, as much as we can. That's all we wanted to do. But it was strange. It was the only thing we couldn't really do, and so the show we played at House of Machines in LA, back in July 2019, was the only proper show we would have ever played.
I was
Yeah,
there. I
yeah, you
was,
were there. Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I knew it was your first
yeah,
show, but I did not realize
yeah.
that,
First and last. Yeah,
wow, I mean,
yeah.
I'm so glad I was there. I'm so glad I got to see that. That was that club isn't even there anymore. I didn't survive
I
the
know.
pandemic. Wow, that was such a
Yeah.
special night. Oh man, I wish you'd been able to play more, but I'm so glad I was there. Can you take me back to what it was like to be on stage that night, that one time?
Yeah, I mean, I look back at it. If somebody asked me if you could, rewind to one moment in your musical career, it would be, the days leading up to that show, and playing that show. Just because, just being on stage with Andy after recording and spending so much time in the studio was just really special. So um, yeah, I mean, we had dates after that, but then we were unable. He was in such a great place then as well. He was just in the zone. He was just at his best. And even though he had the illness there, it was kind of not getting any worse, and it seemed like he was going to beat it at that point. So we were kind of looking forward to really go for it. So yeah, it was unfortunate that we weren't able to play shows, but now we will, play as many as we can in his honor. And he really, when he obviously wanted the album out, but he knew, he knew that this band should be a touring band, and it should be, the music should be played on stage. So we'll do that. But yeah, it is sad that we didn't get a chance to really sort of do that, as much as we wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, that show was amazing. And I remember at the time, I mean, I guess I wasn't surprised that it was a great show because you all are accomplished musicians, but I remember being surprised that it was like, wow, this is their first show. And like, they're just ready to go. This is not a practice show. This is not a dress rehearsal of any kind. It was a fantastic show. So it's great that even though Andy won't be there physically, he'll be there in spirit for these live shows you're gonna do. But like what's the plan for that? Like, well, first of all, I guess the obvious question, who's gonna play bass, but like how are you gonna orchestrate this project going forward?
So we played like the Scala in London in February. We've done a couple of shows in the last few days. So it's just a matter of bringing in different bass players. It's not something where we bring in a band member to replace Andy. It's more we bring in different guest bass players, whoever wants to kind of jump on board and works and plays his role really well. I think that's the most important thing, really. But it was really strange doing the first show, but I always remember sort of 2 songs in, I could really feel his energy there, and because he was such a huge part of the music that it's a weird thing. You feel a lot closer to him being on stage playing the songs. It's kind of like you're kind of connecting in a different way. He's kind of I genuinely feel him. As I'm on stage singing. I mean, we did these shows up in Edinburgh Festival, and you just kind of he's just there. it's really strange. But yeah, and that's another reason to play as many as possible, really.
Well, I'm glad you're doing that. Will you be coming to the US, to Los Angeles?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I still spend probably most of my time in Los Angeles, but uh, yeah, I'll be over this year for a couple of months, and then I think we're doing a special show for Andy in March. We're going to be planting some trees for him and stuff, something that was important to him, and yeah, we want to do a show. I can't really say the venue at the moment because we're just going through all the detail. But I think we'll be doing a Blitz Vega show, and we want to just get as many guests together and people who are influenced by him and inspired by him, and people he knew, and just come together and sort of celebrate him and play the Blitz Vega stuff as well.
Oh my God, I will absolutely be there. There's no
That would
way
be great.
I will
Yeah,
miss
we
that.
need you. We need you there.
Yeah, I absolutely need to be there. So I want to, well, first of all, thank you for taking your time to do this interview. Second, thank you for seeing this project to fruition and honoring Andy's wishes and getting this music out there and continuing to honor him through the live shows. Before I let you go, is there any final words you want to say about how you're feeling as, you know, we're in release week and it's been a long and bumpy journey up to this point?
No, just I hope people who get a chance to listen to the record enjoy it and can feel the energy and passion we put into making it. And that's it, really.
I think they will. I know I do. So again, thank you so much for this conversation and for everything.
Thanks, Lindsay. Appreciate it.